let's make a P90. So we're set up by windows. We have natural light because what we're going to wind this pickup with is 42 gauge wire, which is about the size of a human hair. So let's go over the parts that we're going to need. All right, so the P90 is one of the simplest and, in my opinion, the best pickups ever made. What we have is the cover, and these two screws, these are a long screw that mounts the P90 into the body of the guitar. We have our pole pieces that screw into these other holes in the bobbin. Now this is called the bobbin. The pole pieces screw in here, and this is what we're going to use to wind our wire around. Underneath the bobbin is 2 bar magnets and this strip of metal with holes in it called the keeper. The keeper is what holds, it sits between these magnets and sits underneath this row of holes here underneath the bobbin and keeps everything together. Underneath that is a base plate, typically nickel silver. It's very thin, and all of this sits as the bottom part of the sandwich. And under that are 2 screws that are used to hold this together from the bottom. They screw up through the base plate, through the keeper, and then into the bobbin and hold the contraption together. The bar magnets for this pickup that we're going to do is a south up pickup. So bar magnets, you would think that we're getting our south up from these surfaces, but that is not the case. The pole that we're getting our south up from in this pickup is the edges. So this is the south edge, this is the north edge. This is the south edge, and this is the north edge. So both south edges are in towards the pole pieces. Now if you wanted to reverse the polarity of a pickup in a case where you had 2 pickups in a guitar and you want the center to hum cancel, one of them has to be reverse wound and reverse polarity. So if you were to do this in a north up fashion, you would do-si-do these magnets. So you would leave them flat and you would turn them like this, so the north edges are facing in towards the pole pieces. Alright, so I've got double-sided tape on the bobbin, and we need to put our wire on here. On a modern style bobbin, you'll have 2 eyelets here, which we want to run a start of the coil and the finish of the coil through them. So on this pickup, we're going to wind counterclockwise this way. And because we're winding this way, I'm going to want to put it on this left side eyelet so that it goes right into the coil. You want to take it, and I want to go down through this eyelet to start. Now what I like to do is I grab it, I pull it through, and then I go around again so that it'll pull tight and hold it while we're winding. Let's do a third time, just. Alright, let's pull that tight. So I have it wrapped around this eyelet towards the outside 3 times there. I'm going to cut off a little bit of the extra so that it doesn't get bound up in everything. Alright, so now we have the eyelet attached to our spool. Essentially the idea is it comes off the spool up this way. So put the spool down by your feet. We want to mount our pickup here. And we'll center it. That's why I like this little centering device so much. It makes this job very easy. So we attach this to our plate. Make sure our wire is not caught on anything. So we're going to spin this counterclockwise. We're going to set our limiter. We'll pull the wire. You can see it. Hopefully you can see it in my fingers here. I'm going to hold it and I'm going to go up against this outside limiter. And I'm going to wind this by hand and see where it lands on the bobbin. So here you can see our alignment, and you can barely make out there's a little tiny black gap between the wire and the edge, and that's what we want. I'm going to take the wire here, I'll move it to the other side, and we'll check out and see where that one's at. I've taken it and done the same thing on the other side, and we can see there's a little strip of black there between the wire and the exterior of the bobbin. Alright, so I've checked my limiters to make sure there's a little bit of a gap on each side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this wire in my fingers, control the tension, and then run it between these 2 limiters, and then that's how we're going to get our coil. A P90 for a treble bridge position runs at about 10,000 turns. So a little trick is you want to take a little cornstarch or flour and put a little bit on your fingers so that the wire doesn't catch on your fingers. I build a lot of guitars, so my fingers are very rough. And you don't want, that wire is very delicate, you don't want it to catch on anything and snap in the middle of while we're doing the coil. So when they originally did these, machines would make them, and they did a very even coil, a perfect mechanical coil back and forth that gives a particular kind of resistance and sound. Doing them by hand, we're going to do a scatter wind. So I'm going to show you my recipe for getting a good coil. What I like to do to start is I like to do an even back and forth to begin with for about the first 1,000. So I'm going to go back and forth in a pretty slow, methodic fashion. And I can control the tension of the wire with my fingers, so I'm just adding a little bit of resistance and tightness, keeping it very even. It will never be as even as a machine. A machine does it perfectly, so this is all still technically scatter wound. anything done by the human hand would be. So I'm going slowly back and forth from each side to get a nice beginning of the coil, nice base for us to start with. I'm going to do that for about 1,000 winds or so. So the spool is sitting on the floor and the wire is feeding up through my fingers onto this wind, and it works very quickly, very easily. So I'm about at 1,000. At this point, I'm going to up the speed, and I'm going to begin a back and forth motion where it retraces its steps. So I'm going to check how my coil's doing, take a look at it. So at this point, my coil is looking nice and even. I'm going to start going in a zigzag pattern. So it zigzags across, zigzags back, and I'll do that for about 2,500 or so. So I'm going to speed this up. I'm not going to pinch it too tightly at this speed as you speed up. And I'm going to do a zigzag pattern slowly back and forth. Okay, so we're about at 3,500. Let's stop and take a look at it. So I'm starting to get a little heavy on the right side, which I could feel as I was going. So I want to compensate for that by bringing a little bit more on the left. And so at this point, for about another 1,500 or so, I'm going to do a pretty straight. I'm going to slow the speed down, and I'm going to do a pretty methodical back and forth to reset the size of this coil and to give it kind of just building the flavor here of what this thing is going to sound like. Let's take a look. Coil's looking nice and even. Texture's looking good. Off we go. So at this, I start throwing in full back and forths. Full zigzag pattern. Kind of alternate fast and slow, just kind of how you're feeling. Handmade pickups are really great, and no two are ever really going to be alike. So you kind of keep a general idea of how you like to do them. Let's see, about 8,000, we'll start doing a nice even back and forth again and make sure the coil is nice and even. I like the sound that this scatter wind gives us. Alright, coming in hot on 8,000. Let's see where we're at. Pulling a little heavy on the right side again. So I'm going to even this coil out for the next 2,000. And then we'll stop around 10,000. I like to go a touch over. So you can get different strengths, different styles, I guess you could say, of bar magnets. The ones for this pickup are A2s. You can get Alnico 2s, Alnico 3s, 5s, even 8s. Different strengths of magnetism. And they all have kind of their own different flavor, sound to them. I like to take an A2, which is a little weaker magnet. Let's check the coil, see how it goes. nice and even again. Right side use a little bit. And then overwind this coil a little bit to sit on top of the magnet. And it kind of gives it that stang. Gives a little more clarity to the guitar that this is going in. It'll be a nice touch. Firm up my pinch here a little bit, just for this last couple of rounds. Alright, coil's looking good, nice and even. Right about 10,200, which is perfect, right about there. It's good. So let's take it off the line. I want to be careful with it. Alright, so we want to take this now and get the end wire through this eyelet, through the finish eyelet, which is the one, the opposite one that we started from. Let's relocate to the shop and get it soldered. Alright, so I've relocated out to the shop. I turned the pickup on my dining room table because the light is really good in there with natural light. As rule of thumb, you don't ever want to solder where you eat. So just a heads up on that. I've already prepped this wire. So what we're going to do is we have a black and a white on a south up counterclockwise wound pickup. We're going to wire the black to the start eyelet, and we're going to wire the white to the finish. So you want to be gentle putting these wires in, because that eyelet also houses our very thin winding wire, and we don't want the larger wire to snap the smaller one. So you want to be very delicate. Now this wire has a third ground, which I'm not going to worry about. I'll just ground that to the pickup. So for this, we just want to solder in these eyelets. And get everything nice and fused together. Soldering from the bottom, the solder will drip down in and cause a nice seal, keeping all of our wires nice and secure. Now the soldering joint, when it's done right, will be stronger than the actual wire itself, so you can pull on it a little bit Make sure that it's all secure. So at this point, we have our start and finish lines with our wire to our controls. Alright, so let's finish getting this beast together. Let's test it really quick before we go any further. .3, perfect. That is what we're going for this guitar. So let's finish assembly. So here's our base plate, our magnets and keeper. We have the wire coming off the coil. What we want to do is I want to carefully pick this up. We'll run our wires down through this hole. Alright, now if you remember, this wire had 3 leads on it. A black, a white, and a ground. So I'm going to take this ground and there is actually a little tiny tang for it that we're going to solder the ground to, that attaches to the screw that holds the base plates together. So first, let's get everything lined up, looking nice. Let's get a couple of pole pieces in here. Alright, so the coil, we could wrap it with tape to give it a little extra protection. But at this point, we have one more base screw and that's it. That pickup is together. Alright, so that's the P90 when it's done. We have the base plate on, magnets, pole pieces are in, the 2 bottom screws. We have a ground for this 3rd wire. It works great only if you have a 2-wire lead. It doesn't much matter. You just need one on the end, the start of the coil, one on the end of the coil. And so this is ready to go in the guitar. I'll do another video on how to mount them and do the routes, and we'll do some guitar playing videos to show you the end result. So until next time, thanks.